Yeah, as Ryan said, I'm the team lead on Confluence Questions, so I'm just going to chat to you guys a bit today about how we've implemented that at Atlassian, so what our internal Q&A instance looks like, how we kind of go about measuring the success of that instance, and what it kind of means to be internal and what you should sort of expect from what you guys end up putting in your Confluence instance. So just to kick things off, it's a pretty small group, so maybe we can tailor this a bit. How many of you have a Confluence Questions instance running right now? What's that, 20% maybe? Okay, so I'll give a super quick overview of what CQ is. So I know I'm going to say CQ many times. That's my abbreviation for Confluence Questions. So this kind of started out as a project that came about after our answers.atlassian.com website. So I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with that, but it's this kind of big Q&A community that we have for our customers that ended up being so successful that we saw a lot of questions on there from people saying, can I buy this thing? Like, we really want this to run internally in our company. So we kind of thought about it for a while, and we sat on it for a while, and then decided to, pull the trigger and do this. So it kind of fits in with Confluence in the sense that Confluence is this great platform for pushing ideas out into your company. So if you have some great idea you want to push out, you kind of have this ability to post a blog or a page or whatever and share that knowledge with the rest of your company. But a lot of the time, you're going to have a burning question. If you're a new hire, you might want to know, like, when you're going to get a pay slip. If you're joining a new team, how do you deploy to production, like all that kind of stuff. So Confluence is great for pushing stuff out, but not so much for pulling and extracting information out of your company. So if you're the person in the middle here with a question, you know that the rest of your colleagues have these answers for you, right? So you want to pull them out and really. This is how CQ excels alongside Confluence. So it ends up looking something like this. We've added in a little questions tab up the top there, so your whole kind of community lives inside there. You have what we call the big search box, the BSB, so you can start sort of typing in something you want to know, and if it's not already in the system, it sort of transitions nicely into asking a question to your company. That kind of feeds into this question list, so you can see there's voting going on. People vote up and down on questions and answers, and the question asker can accept an answer if they think it's really good. And that kind of leads into the reputation system, finding experts within your company, people who know about Confluence, people who know about Jira. You want to try and identify these experts and really target your questions towards them. So that's our vanilla Q&A. That's what we think we've got going really well right now. Super simple, easy idea for new users to grok. And so we think we're on the right track there. So why do you want to measure the success, I guess? And what's really important here? So success kind of looks different for every different Q&A community, so it kind of depends a little bit on how you want to run it. And also being internal, makes a big difference compared to some of the web scale communities. So you're not going to see the same kind of activity that you see on Quora, Stack Overflow, those kinds of guys. And so what kind of expectation should you really have? So we've got a lot of learnings that we've had over the time that we've been running our instance, and so I'm going to share a few of those with you. Some of the use cases that we see internally are pretty cool. So people have kind of hacked Q&A a little bit within Atlassian to fit their needs. So there's some cool things you can use in your instance to try and drive engagement. And some of the measures you can take if some of these metrics are starting to look a little bit low. So yeah, at a very high level, we'd like to look at these 5 kind of key things, like the number of votes, the number of answers, comments, questions, and the number of accepted answers that you get. And this is actually a chart from our internal instance. The scale isn't particularly important. What we want to look at is how the different measures are, the relative difference between the different measures. So we see here like heaps and heaps of voting going on, which is really an exciting thing for us. It means that we have a lot of kind of lightweight consumers, people that want to vote up, vote down, and maybe ask a question every now and then. And then answers and comments are kind of well above questions, which is really good. It means we get a lot of questions and comment, a lot of activity per question. And accepted answers is a little bit low. It's underneath the number of questions. So that's something to keep an eye on, I guess. But this is kind of our yardstick, I guess, for what a successful Q&A community might look like. What we saw in on-demand when we're looking at analytics from our customers was a very different picture to begin with. Heaps and heaps of questions going on, but not many answers coming in. So that's obviously a problem. There's not a lot of value going to the system if people have all these questions that are sitting there unanswered. And voting in particular, which is our most lightweight interaction, is really low. So that's kind of a bit confusing. But as time went on, and we made changes to the product to try and pimp out the upvote and downvote icons and all that kind of stuff, like we tried to improve these things, and gradually we saw some success, which is really cool. But it's still nothing like what our internal instance looks like. So our kind of high-level goal is to try and make this chart look a little bit more like our internal one. Breaking that down a little bit more, we start to look at a few kind of key metrics. So questions per day gives us a similar kind of reading to that chart, but also over time what the instance is doing. So we see about 4.8 questions per day. And that's pretty good for us, like over a long period of time. And I guess the point of this metric is that without questions to kick everything off, you kind of have no value in your system whatsoever. So this is the driver for everything else, and it's really important to keep that up. Then we start looking at questions answered. So if you don't get answers in there, as I said, there's no value in your system. So your answer rate is quite important, and we're starting to see about 75% answers within Atlassian. And to me, that's actually getting a little bit low, so we're going to try and do something about that. Number of participants is also pretty important. So like I was saying, you have that lightweight consumer that's going to vote up, vote down, and that's it's a bit better than just coming in and viewing a page, viewing a question and an answer. But it's quite high for us, which is really cool. But then we will break this down into those kinds of lightweight users and the core group of experts that you get that are really, really important for driving out your community and actually providing a lot of value. And then we look at answers per question. So this is, I guess, our measure of quality. So the more answers that you get for a question, the more the community has the ability to vote them up, vote them down, and the best ones will surface to the top and all that kind of thing. So, and it kind of, it shows you how much of a discussion is going on and how active things are. So we get quite a few answers per question, and comments per question is also really high. So that's kind of that's where we're at now. We think we've done pretty well with vanilla Q&A, but we're starting to see, like I was saying, all the different colors of the Q&A rainbow, or the flavors of the Q&A rainbow. So running through some of these hacks that people have done. The first one kind of led into the CQ sessions, like the Q&A stuff that you're using here. And this started out as an internal gripe within the team, because this kind of question leads to all these answers that are actually really good questions that you want the answers to, but they're so close, they're kind of in your system almost, and then you can't quite get at them. So we kind of said we need to change this around and provide the ability to poll for questions, I guess. And so it started out as a ship it, and then now it's here. It's really cool. So here's an example. So this is Jay, our president. His use of our internal CQ instance is pretty much entirely these collector questions. He just wants to know what people want to know from him at all staffs and all that kind of stuff. And so this is okay, except it kind of screws your expert system, because voting doesn't really mean expertise in this sense. It's kind of a popularity contest. It's like, I want to hear the answer to this question, but giving that person reputation for asking a good question doesn't necessarily mean anything. So they kind of play with the metrics, and this is what you've got to be kind of careful with. The second one is sort of these targeted questions. So it's not really a broadcast to the entire company. You don't want to spam everybody with this question. Maybe you just want to ask your team about it. And the idea that everyone sees the answer to this question, or the fact that you're asking it's probably not desirable. So we don't really facilitate this right now, but we do have very specific, or people labeling questions with very specific topics to try and get it into the hands of the right people. And trying to actually do targeted questions is something that we're thinking about now. This is probably, well, by far the most popular type of question. These things, oops, these things go off. This was probably the most popular piece, or the fastest kind of growing piece of content I've ever seen in Atlassian, or blog post, anything. We had about 60 answers to this question in 20 minutes, and then it ended up with about 140 or 150 and several hundred comments and thousands of votes. It was kind of pretty funny to watch. But yeah, again, it screws the expert system, right? Like, one of the guys in my team was second on the overall leaderboard, and he got knocked off by someone who put the most popular answer to this question. And he was like, well, what the hell, man? Like, well, how do you compete with that? So it also leads into like some of the most unpopular pieces of content. So this is one of the answers to that question. And minus 59 votes is by far the most we've seen. And poor Dom, like, he ended up with a reputation chart that took this massive little drop here. And we don't think any less of him as an expert because of this, but you know, this is just something to keep an eye on, and people might get thrown off by this kind of drop and this abuse of the expert system, I guess. Next, we got the kind of discussion style question, like, what do you guys think about this? How do you think we should do this? And we do see quite a few of these, and they don't really fit that whole, there's a question with a specific answer and you can accept that answer kind of model. It's just it's a bit of a free-for-all. And so things like the answers being ranked by the number of votes doesn't really work anymore. You really want that chronological type of question, sequence of answers. But they're very popular nonetheless. So yeah, that's one big one in Atlassian. And the last is this kind of ideation style. It's kind of a bit of the push model of Confluence creeping into Confluence questions. So really trying to get this idea out there and get people's thoughts on it. And again, like, it kind of screws with your expert system, because there's no real sense of expertise here, and people do just vote on stuff when they +1 it, or they kind of like it. So yeah, so one of these that we saw, we see a lot of kind of feature requests for questions in questions, which is kind of cool and meta. But yeah, it's not that traditional kind of Q&A. So there's a lot of cool stuff in there. There's a lot of cool different question types, especially the polls. I would encourage you to put in polls. They have to be for meaningful things. Like, we do see a lot of what was your first computer, like, questions and that kind of stuff, and people will vote up and down. But like that room name, people have some massive sense of attachment to room names for some reason at Atlassian. So that definitely drove up our engagement quite a lot. So yeah, as I said, like, that's all really good for engagement. We don't want to be prescriptive about the way that people do Q&A in Confluence questions. It is this kind of free-for-all kind of thing. But then, yeah, we need to keep an eye on what success really means in this instance, right? So keeping, like, if you really don't want to have that kind of discussion style question, you really want crafted, constructed answers to your questions, try and avoid some of those question types that lead to random stuff. And the sense of expertise, the concepts of expertise can be thrown out by all of these things. So it's really up to you how you guys want your Q&A communities to run. But I'm not going to just kind of do a big cop-out and say that. So we really want to help you guys track these things and monitor them. So in a very sort of soon to hit the shelves version of Confluence questions, we have this stats page that you can track all of those things I was talking about, the big numbers. It's pretty, and the sort of chart over time. So this is off our internal instance again. It's pretty bare bones at the moment. The numbers, like, will eventually kind of give you actions that you can take if these are dropping, and try and notify admins when things start to go a little bit wrong. But just to kind of run through a few of them right now and a few of the things you can do. So if you've got a low question rate, then you've got an uptake problem, and that's one of the things that we see in every single, like, new Q&A instance. It's really hard to start one of these things. And what we found works best at Atlassian is recruiting evangelists. So we have people in the talent team who have a big site around how you can, how to run interviews effectively, and anyone who has questions about interviewing candidates can come in and ask questions, and they've been amazing at promoting it. The other one is Build Engineering, is using CQ heavily, and just sort of letting those guys run with it was really awesome. So yeah, definitely try and find people into your company to help you, because it's not an easy thing to do by yourself. And we've also started to try and productize some of these things. So if you have a big existing Confluence user base, you can announce CQ once you've installed it and got some initial content in there with a nice email that shows them very popular things or new questions that have been asked and guides them along the way. So we're working on that too. If your questions answered percentage is kind of dropping low, it's a sign you need to build up that kind of core group of experts and do a bit more of that evangelizing. But one thing you can really do is look at we have a filter of unanswered questions. And if those are sitting around for a long time, like if people see that their questions are never getting answered, they're never going to come back. So that's a really important thing to do. And you can share questions out, promote questions to various other people in your organization. If you're not getting enough active users, and this is one big thing that we see, like there is a lot hiding behind the questions link and it's not very discoverable. Like long-time Confluence users just don't notice that it's there at all. So we've tried to kind of build some stuff that takes CQ out into Confluence itself. So you can embed questions list macros on pages and filter by certain topics. So that's what the Talend team did. They set up a big space that was all about recruitment and interviewing and embedded some questions on there. And then you can ask a question from that macro as well, which is kind of cool. And we did this awesome little dashboard hack, which I'll show you in a second. And the last one, answer ratio. So like I said, like it really depends on what kind of Q&A instance you're trying to run. We want this number to go up and up and up. We could never have enough of this, but sometimes you just kind of want to do a FAQ, do very crafted answers for your company. So it depends on you, but for our use cases, we've really tried to get people involved in following topics. So we built these features to get you to follow topics when you first join. So pick 5 topics and follow a topic after you ask a question. So yeah, just to finish off, this is a little dashboard hack. So I don't know how many of you know this, but the welcome message still lets you use wiki markup, which is a little secret, I guess. And you can embed macros on there. So I think what we've done is put a link to a page which has all this content that scrolls down the left-hand side of our dashboard. And since we did that, I think about 22 or 23% of all of our questions come in from the dashboard, because people love to sit on the dashboard and watch all this popular content flow down from pages and blogs and stuff. So yeah, we've kind of opened it up from there, and it's kind of gone nuts, which has been awesome. So yeah, thank you guys. I'm happy to talk about Q&A and help you guys with any questions you got about launching a CQ instance. So come and grab me after the talk, or go onto the bit.ly link and ask questions. Thanks guys.